evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 202nd take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, as always, Barry Duplessis, and I'm so pleased, so proud, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show. We welcome back one of the greats. I always say we were separated at birth, but not really, because I think he's a little older, but he looks a little younger. It's one of those things. But we'll get to formal introductions in a second. But before we do have to thank the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Recently, Drew Estate announced that their prize Liga Privada H99, the Hybrid 99 Connecticut Corojo, is now available as a regular production cigar exclusively to qualifying Drew Diplomat program participants. While all Liga Privada cigars have limited production capacity due to the rarity of the tobacco leaves used in each offering, the magnificent Kappa leaves from the Connecticut River Valley that stand as the hallmark for each Liga Privada expression remain by far the most difficult component to procure. This has been especially true for the Liga Privada H99 Connecticut Corojo. Just one Connecticut River Valley farmer cultivates Liga Privada H99 Connecticut Corojo's Kappa leaf, a hybrid delivered from stock cut Habano and Connecticut Corojo tobaccos that have grown exclusively for Drew Estate. So check out your Drew Diplomat retailer today and pick up one of the Liga Privada H99 Connecticut Corojo cigars. They are one to cherish. And we also welcome everyone in for our 202nd take. I can't believe I've done over 200 of these. It is my pleasure, my privilege, my honor to welcome back the one, the only, the chief of the Broadleaf. Yes, he is Nick Melillo of Foundation Cigars. Nick, how are we doing tonight?
Also fumare. Great to see you, man. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, the honor is mine, sir. The honor is mine as always. I'm really excited to have you on tonight. We got something a little special in the mix. Didn't quite work out as planned, but we're rolling through and we're rolling with it. So I'm really excited for it. But before we kind of get into the fun part of the night, I wanted to bring up something that I saw when I was kind of just, I guess, perusing the periodicals. I know it's kind of, weird. No one does that anymore, but
perusing the periodicals. You don't hear that too much.
No, you don't. But I tell you what, I was really excited, and I was really excited to see that a piece was done on you, that was picked up by the Birmingham Times, but it was a piece originally wrote by Percy Crawford, who is a writer for Zenger, which is another publication. Yeah. It was picked up by Birmingham Times. So I mean, obviously, kind of, widespread about these, mainstream, news outlets and everything. And it was a bio piece on you. I mean, it was a great piece. I've heard most of the stuff in there, a couple of new things that I hadn't heard before about it, but it was a great article, really well written by Percy. I mean, how did that piece come to be? What came about from that?
That's so awesome. You saw that, man. It's great to hear some feedback. Percy reached out to me, and to be honest with you, I wasn't really aware of who he was writing for or anything, or the magnitude of it. And Percy called me up, and we did a great interview. He was a pleasure to talk to, trying to give a little, more information and not do the same old in my interviews, spice it up a little bit. But it was just sort of happened. I got reached out. I think he sent a message on our info page, and my assistant there in the office hooked it up.
Well, that's really great. He is he a cigar smoker? Do you know?
He is, and he's definitely a newer smoker. So it was really cool, I think, just for him to talk and have a conversation and learn a bit more. Also about the Connecticut River Valley, where we have Foundation's headquarters. So I think that was really interesting to him. So it was nice to talk to, a smoker that's more of a common smoker, and kind of educate a newer smoker, because he was definitely loving the information. So I think that helped with the article,
Yeah, no, I thought it was really, like I said, I thought it was really well done. You could tell it was like, that's why I was asking, because you could tell he he'd either done his incredible, he might be both. He was incredibly well researched, but you could tell that there was a little bit of cigar knowledge there too. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
But it was written really well for the layman too, who like had no idea about any of this, and it really gave a great insight to you. And I thought
It's
I thought it came
amazing
off
when
well.
how you write different articles and the way different writers are able to communicate messages. It's pretty amazing sometimes to see. And he definitely did a great job. Um, layman's terms. I like simplify it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I tend to get a little too into it, and sometimes it can go over the layman's head sometimes,
Well, I think that's what's really great about our conversations, Nick, that we've had. Like we've kind of, in the green room right before we started, you're like, what are we doing? Are we just talking smack or what? But I mean, like we can have that conversation, but we can also like nerd out to like a level that, probably like you and I and maybe a handful of people like appreciate of, with
Yeah. I'm
tobacco.
sure
And
you got a
that's
lot of
great.
nerds watching this show.
I do. I feel like I do. I've got the right nerds. I've got the right nerds, as they say. So,
That's good. I
but
include myself in that
absolutely.
categorization.
But
I don't want any viewers to get offended.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, I've heard you and several people in this industry say it, like you're a cigar smoker first, and while you're a manufacturer and brand owner, there you still love cigars, and it's a passion that's, hasn't gone away, so that's curious to me. I was thinking about this the other day too, before we kind of launch in here. Like, um, I mean, do you, especially in the last 2 years, have you been able to smoke other stuff that's out there? Or, I mean, I know you're really focused on your business, and you
Yeah,
still work
it's
tirelessly, but
I am, man. I smoke other people's stuff here and there, but definitely I get smoked out a lot. I got 3 boxes of my stuff here. I'm always testing every week. I start with different boxes, different sizes, and kind of smoke through them. And I can't, quality control check every stick, but I do my best to, make sure batches are on point and, the consistency's there. Just as you said, I'm a cigar smoker first. So I understand first and foremost, when you're spending your hard-earned dollars on sticks, the last thing you want, or I want somebody to have, is a bad experience. So to answer your question, yeah, I don't get to smoke a lot of people's stuff, but I do dabble here and there. It's crazy because I was buying that bottle of, don't tell anybody, that tequila, and they had a humidor in the shop. And don't kill me. I hope you guys are you're gonna kill me after. I bought a Macanudo Inspirado just to see what's going on.
which one? Now there's several. What
It's a
color?
Robusto. It's the orange flavor.
The orange one. Okay.
Yeah, this one. So,
Well, you grew you
yeah,
grew
I
up
want
you
those.
grew up on that brand, so that's kind of got to be like nostalgic, kind of going back to it on occasion.
When I started, man, it was 90. It's really 95. Macanudo was being made in Kingston, Jamaica, and that was one of the earlier cigars that I smoked. That and Excalibur #3s, both in the broadleaf and Connecticut shade. But Macanudo in 95, 96. I haven't smoked a Macanudo in probably 10 years. So that's why I picked one up. I'll tell you what I did during the pandemic on like the first month. The first year I started smoking my pipe every morning. So I got really big back into my pipes.
Yeah, I remember
because my
talking about that.
grandfather, yeah, he passed, and I did it for him for like a year. Lit up a bowl almost every day in his honor. So that was kind of nice. And then I ended up opening a box of Padron 40th that I had gotten from Jorge Padron in like 2010 at the Nicaraguan Cigar Festival for charity.
Wow.
And it was sitting in my humidor for this beautiful box. I have like maybe 5 sticks left. I was smoking those. I said, life's too short. I got to smoke these babies. So I was smoking those. I love Dion from Illusion. I'm a big fan of Illusion. I love Dion stuff. I love his, not only his cigars and his palette, but his branding and just the whole style of Illusion. I'm a big fan of those. I've always been a big Padron guy. It's just, how I've always 3,000 Padron Maduros used to be one of my staples. I was a big Fuente guy, but I really just don't get to smoke enough. I should, to test everything out, but I usually do it when somebody says, "Hey, try this. This is really good." I really enjoyed this, and but otherwise, I get that with Cubans sometimes. Trying Cubans, but it's
I just
rare
feel like,
I get one that I'm blown away.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like, for all the blustering and everything, like, all of back and forth and stuff like that. The inconsistencies of the Habano cigars that I've gotten in the last couple of years, it's just been unfortunate, right? Because
I want somebody to do a case study, because I find it the most fascinating. Cuban cigars, we know it's the mystique and you can't get them,
right?
But to many people in the market, in the brand, has the prestige of the highest quality, and yet the reality is quite the opposite.
Right.
Compared to Nicaraguan, Dominicans, Hondurans, you're getting 4, 5, 6 sticks in the Cuban boxes that don't draw, are terrible quality, and the consumers. I talked to one of the guys that runs some Habanos SA stores. I said, "Well, what do you do when these customers are paying these prices and they don't? Do you take them back? Do you return?" He's like, "No, everybody just eats them."
It's an exceptional
fascinating
margin.
to me.
It's an exceptional
It's
margin.
fascinating,
right?
That people still go and smoke them. That
right.
They are consistently smoking them.
It's unbelievable. No, I've had this discussion a couple of times, but like let's face it, Nick, like honestly, like you make some incredible cigars. You partner with some incredible factories that are actually known for technical perfection, or damn near close to it, right? If people started saying that about Foundation cigars, like, "Oh, you got to buy a box," you know what, 4 or 5 of them are probably going to be like plugged and bliss or whatnot, won't burn, but the rest of them are money. Like the other person's going to just tell them, like, "You're crazy, go take a walk." Like, that's just not acceptable. But that's unbelievable that the accepted margin of error still with that is on Habanos. They're like,
that's why I think like a business school or something should do a case study on this whole thing, because it really is interesting, the psychology of it.
Yeah. I'd read it. Yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding?
Same here.
It'd be unbelievable. So, well, Nick, let's kind of jump into it here. Like I invited you on to be on tonight, and I was really excited. So last time I had you on, like I said, this is my 202nd take. I had you back in the 130s.
Nice.
Wow. So it's been a bit, but we talked tequila that night, and it was a specific tequila that I was drinking that I love. I've just fallen in love with it, Corralejo Reposado, and you're like, "Yeah, I'd have to try it." And I was like, "Man, let me get you taken care of." And like I messed up. I never got you that bottle, and I was like, "Well, let's rectify that." And so you were kind enough to give me your address so I could send you the bottle. And as fate would have it, tonight we've got we had some interesting mishap with it, but you still got the bottle there. At least that's the main thing. I don't, but you do.
The biggest bottle I've ever seen in my life. They only had the 1,000.
I hope you like it.
750 mils. I can't wait. I got it. I got a little pour here going.
That's awesome. So
I got my crystal out.
There you go. I'm still moving, so I shamelessly have a plastic cup here, but
it works.
I'm drinking the Maestro Doble Anejo tequila tonight, and just the reason why I'm not partaking in the tequila that I was raving about that night with Nick tonight is because I went to go grab a bottle out of my case, and yeah, during the move, all the remaining bottles I had left are gone. They did not make it. So, but that's all good. It's all good. We're drinking tequila tonight, and we're smoking the OG, man. We are smoking the OG.
Original. Wednesday.
So
you're smoking the Corona, right?
The Corona Gora. That was what you told me to do.
Yes.
And I'm really excited about this. So this is the Corona Gora. So it's the 5 5/8 by 46. Totally in my wheelhouse. I love Robustos and Coronas, Corona Gora, that size cigar. These are totally my jam. But this is the one that I mean, obviously put you on the map because it's the original blend that started Foundation Cigars. Sir. But this is also the one that kind of, you know, proverbially put you on the map, because this was the very cigar and Vitola that made it on the top 25 list that first year, right?
That is correct. Yeah. First year out of the gates, we got top 25. I'm just posting this link here on our Instagram. So try to get some more people in there. There we go. I just posted it. So yeah, so our first blend and brand, this was the first brand we came to market in 2015. We launched at the show, 2015. We started shipping late September, early October. This brand means everything to me because, of course, it's our first brand, but it also represents my time, you know, in Nicaragua and the cigar industry. So the OG Wednesday, we were honored to get, you know, the consensus #1 cigar of the year that year, which was really awesome to get, you know, all the guys online, have it be #1. And then towards the end of the year, we ended up getting top 25 Cigar Aficionado, which was a great honor. But, you know, 100% Nicaraguan blend, filler binder wrapper. The Wednesday really represents Nicaragua itself. I mean, it's really the heart and soul of Nicaraguan culture and the Nicaraguan people. Doesn't matter what political affiliation, what religion you come from in Nicaragua, every Nicaraguan can identify with Wednesday as being, you know, unique to Nicaragua and its culture. So I thought it was a perfect imagery to really complement 100% Nicaraguan blend. And I hope you're smoking as well as mine is, because right now it's hitting quite nice.
It's starting off really good. So let's get into tonight's pair. And this is tonight's major point. And tonight's major point is always brought to you by the people, cigar people, the people who know everything about a lifetime of service. Protocol Cigars is more than just pool parties and good times. Well, maybe it is. But behind the fun is a motivation for service, a motivation for giving back. From the original Protocol Blue to the latest release in the Lawman series, Bass Reeves, Protocol has always been about honor, passion, and yes, the people. It's what their life's work has been and always will be about. Power of the P, Protocol Cigars. So I wanted, like we said, we wanted to nerd out a little bit here. So Nick, what is it about this? Let me break down this blend. You kind of talked about it a little bit. This is Nicaraguan Corojo 99 wrapper, Nicaraguan Corojo 99 binder, and then also Nicaraguan in the filler. So it's a Nicaraguan Puro, manufactured at TAPSA, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And
correct.
And
that actually happened because of
Dion
from Illusione. So I had been dealing with, you know, Aganorsa in Nicaragua since 2003, buying leaf over the years. And then Dion and I met back in Nicaragua in about 2009. So I had just departed DE, and Dion happened to be in Nicaragua, and he said, why don't you come over to the factory and see what's going on? And you know, I had never really worked with those guys' wrappers before. Growing now, there's much more wrapper being grown in Nicaragua than I've seen since, you know, 2003. Generally speaking, there was not much wrapper leaf being grown in Nicaragua because of the sun exposure, the soil, very difficult. Incredible filler, strength, body, flavor, really difficult to grow wrapper. So these guys at Aganorsa were some of the first ones to really start early on, and it took some time for it really to develop. So I hadn't worked with much Nicaraguan wrapper over the years, and I knew the first project I wanted to do. I'd never done with my previous, employer, a full 100% Nicaraguan blend that came to market.
That's true.
So,
yeah, I was just about to say that.
yeah.
Okay. That's true.
So I thought it was perfect, as a first debut blend and brand. I really wanted to do 100% Nicaraguan filler binder wrapper, which is, again, tough to do. The wrapper is grown under, the cheesecloth tents in Jalapa. Jalapa makes it a little bit easier to grow wrapper leaf just because of the soil and climate up there. The growing under the cheesecloth tents was developed in Connecticut, right, in the early 1900s, which is a fascinating story. I don't know how deep you want to get, but
just roll.
We go back to 1902, 1901. There was a gentleman in Windsor, Connecticut. What was happening in the market at the time is that the Dutch were growing a lot of wrapper in Sumatra. And because of the climate in Sumatra and where they were growing their tobacco, they got a lot of shade from the jungles where they were growing. So that shaded the sunlight, and they were able to produce Sumatra wrapper. So an incredible yield from the plant because of this lack of sun exposure, because of the jungles. So Connecticut was getting crushed by the Sumatra leaf in the market. This is late 1800s, early 1900s. So the Department of Agriculture started working on this problem because we were growing broadleaf and Cuban seed at the time, but the yields that were coming from the Sumatra wrapper were just, if you're a manufacturer, and at that time, you didn't have vertical integration as much, right? If you were a manufacturer, you were a manufacturer. So as a manufacturer, you're looking for high yields, wrapper leaf that's going to work. It's not going to be as difficult on the production floor. And that Sumatra leaf was used.
Were they stock cutting that early too? Because then yield is that much more important at that point too.
Not this. You're talking about the Sumatra or the in Connecticut for the broadleaf?
In Connecticut.
That is actually a really great question, Bear, that I do not know. I do not know that. So I don't know. Cuban seed, they were priming. I'm going to say 85% they were priming, but I'm going to double check that. Priming really started to happen as the cost of the stalk cutting, as the cost of labor started going up. Shade was always primed in the valley, right? But I'm going to say because of the Cuban seed, they were priming it, but I'm going to actually double check that. That's a great question. Regardless, they were getting creamed by the yields because broadleaf is just not really a wrapper style plant. If you see it growing in the fields, it looks like a filler plant. It's shorter, it's stockier. You're in the 4-foot range, really big leaves, falls over, you get a lot of breakage. The Cuban seed in Connecticut is a little bit better. It's growing straight up, but tremendous amount of oil. So they were just getting killed by the Sumatra leaf at the time. So the Department of Agriculture hybridized. We're working on creating something to compete with the Dutch and the Sumatra, and they hybridized broadleaf, Cuban seed, and Sumatra seed, and that gave birth to Connecticut shade. Then this guy, I think his name was Barber, interestingly enough, ended up planting the tobacco under cheesecloth shaded tents to mimic the conditions of the Sumatran jungles. So that's really when it started. So mimicking those conditions, that cheesecloth, what happens is it creates a microclimate under the tent where your humidity level, moisture level is going up 10%. It's a little bit hotter, but you're not getting that sun exposure. Hence, the plant starts growing much taller the leaf's much thinner, vein structure much thinner, and that really gave birth to, you know, Connecticut shade. And Connecticut shade ended up, you know, really dominating all through the 1900s until the late 1980s. They took the seed down to Ecuador, interestingly enough, and the Dutch were still involved in that. So the Dutch got their revenge, essentially. And since the late 1980s,
those damn Dutch.
because of the cloud cover in Ecuador, the seed, Connecticut shade seed, took really well. Because you don't have to put the tents up. You have a natural tent in the cloud cover, this really like gray, thin cloud cover produces wrapper.
Okay, let's hit the pause on this, because I want to talk about this. You brought it up. I was actually going to mention this. So Ecuador, okay. So
yeah,
it was another manufacturer who comes out with the cigar, and I'm not going to call him out. But he talked about how the wrapper was grown in Ecuador, and it was this particular seed variant, right, that we're talking about, grown in Ecuador, and he referred to it as cloud grown. And I said, don't you mean sun grown? And he says, no, cloud grown. I was like, so shade grown? And he's like, no, Bear, cloud grown. And honestly, man, I thought he was full of shit. So like, that's an actual thing. We're talking about cloud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was not just
cloud
making
grown.
up something. Cloud because of the climate.
Because of the climate, and the clouds during the growing season filters that light, which again, the plant is not getting that sun exposure. Thinner vein structure, thinner leaves. Plants get 9 feet, 10 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
More primings, more wrapper. And it started really chipping away at the Connecticut shade sales from the late 1980s through the 90s until here we are today in 2022. There's hardly any shade being grown in the valley. Okay. The market didn't really, for the most part, didn't notice, right? Because the shift happened. And because of the style of tobacco, the market really didn't notice. Connecticut shade is very thin. It's very neutral in many ways, you know, because of it doesn't take on much fermentation. It's so thin. And that's why it makes such great wrapper. But this shift sort of happened. And they were able to, because the market didn't. Now with Connecticut broadleaf, you can't do that. You know,
people are trying, but
grown, you're trying. And listen, not to say that there's not some good stuff. You know, Pennsylvania, there's stuff in all over the place right now. Honduras, Nicaragua, I'm sure Brazil's growing some, Mexico's growing, you know, they're testing, and a lot of which is intended to the mass market, because the mass market actually is one of the bigger consumers of Connecticut broadleaf, and that market's been growing leaps and bounds because of the legalization of cannabis. So that's been driving a lot of this. And
we talked about that last show.
Unfortunately, the weather in Connecticut hasn't been cooperating for the most part in Connecticut. This season was just rain, kept raining. Past 5 years has been difficult. So, you know, this is why Tabernacle, our brand, the Tabernacle, very limited supply, and it's not a marketing gimmick. It's there. What we have is amazing leaf. It's just there's not the quantities due to the weather. And just imagine you're going through fermentation for 2 years before the stuff is ready. The Cuban seed from Connecticut, we're looking at 2.5, 3 years. So it's a challenge. I'm kind of skipping around, but circle back around the tents again. Now you see that in Nicaragua. Cuba started many years ago with the shade grown tents. You know, it's a pretty common practice, but from my knowledge, it really originated in Connecticut in the early 1900s.
We've got some classic, what I would call classic questions, but I think they're worth bringing up that are coming up in the chat here. And one of them was just put forth about like, and I always dig this question when I work in the humidor and people ask me this question, but I'd love to get your take on it because everyone has a certain take on it. So and I'll Nick, I'll sort of answer for you. So pardon me, but feel free to just school me here too. But the question is, what percentage of a cigar's flavor on average do you think is a result heavily influenced by the wrapper, the binder, and the filler? And it was posed by Macy, who's in our audience tonight. And Macy, what I'll tell you is that in my experience, and I think Nick may agree, is I think it just depends on it depends on the blend. And it depends on the actual tobacco that you're talking about with the wrapper. Because like Nick was saying a moment ago, shade grown is very neutral in a lot of ways. It doesn't lend much flavor because like a lot of the trends that we saw before a few years ago, you saw Connecticut shade cigars like, oh, they're too mild, they're blands, they're bitter, they're this, they're that. And then Nick, you come out with the high curd classel, which is a full flavored, medium bodied, just powerhouse of a cigar in the high clair castle, which, again, binder and filler obviously had a lot to do with that. So I think it has a lot to do with the blend, but Nick, I kind of answered, but
no, you're spot on, man. And I don't think a lot of people answer it that way. There's always this debate going on, what contributes, but I agree to what you're saying. It all depends on the blend, and each of those leaves in the blend has a tremendous, I think, impact in some way on the overall flavor profile of the cigar. I think ring gauge is also a big factor, right?
Yeah, 1000%.
If you're smoking Lanceros, your 40 ring gauge, your smaller ring gauges, having more distribution of wrapper compared to the filler leaves, and you're going to have a difference. You're going to be tasting more of the wrapper leaf in that blend compared to if you have a larger ring gauge. And like you said, it depends on where the tobacco is coming from and what the blend is. It's amazing to see what, wrappers and then binders and how they change and bring together or don't bring together certain filler leaves. For me, the trick with, you talked about high clair, the Connecticut shade, the binder is Modafina Brazil. So we always say to, have you smoked the Connecticut shade with the Maduro wrapper? The binder is very dark. It's a darker Brazilian Modafina leaf that helps buffer some of the strength of the filler leaves. So you can increase the strength without it being overwhelming on power.
Right.
Does that make sense? If I
absolutely.
put a Connecticut shade on the Tabernacle blend, it's going to totally change the whole. So it's going to be way too potent, way too much strength because the Connecticut shade is so thin. And I use a lot of heavy filler leaves in that Tabernacle blend, Visos and Ligeros. So if you put a Connecticut shade that's so thin, that filler is going to really bring it out. But broadleaf, it's thick, vein structure, that really helps round out some of the filler strength. It doesn't, even though it's a fuller bodied cigar, it doesn't make it, harsh and jade the palate.
Well, I mean, even to like it's a really beefed up blend, but even to dive into the cigar that we're smoking tonight, like the Corona Gorda that I'm smoking now, like it even impacts like the texture of the smoke, like the Toro Huaco, which is so my two favorite sizes, ironically, are the one that I'm smoking tonight, the Corona Gorda, and the Toro Huaco. But it's the same blend, but because of the Vitola, you get a totally different experience. The Toro Huaco, the smoke is very velvety, and it's almost got this. It leaves like this cream-like texture on the palate. When I smoke the Corona Gorda, it is straightforward, and it singes is bad because it sounds like it's being the negative, but it singes the palate more. There isn't that velvety creaminess to the smoke texture. Yeah. It's just very much. It's more really,
straightforward.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. It brings the blend to you, but for that reason, I like it in both of those Vitolas for two different reasons.
Which is interesting because I tend to to blend some of the smaller the Coronas a little bit stronger. Even though they're supposed to be consistent with the, you know, the rest of the line, I tend to kick them up a little bit on the Corona size.
Oh, there's definitely some pop to this cigar, and it's like, but it's
yeah.
The sweetness of the tequila though is really, it's tampering it down, and it's a really nice thing. So what do you think of the tequila so far?
I'm gonna go in. Hold on, I got to do a little Mountain Valley spring water to clear that palate.
There you go.
Wow. That's amazing that there's no bite on that. I didn't get any bite.
All right, that'll get you in trouble real quick, man.
Yeah, that's dangerous. That's quite nice, man. I'm kind of shocked by it.
I'm glad you're digging it. Like I told you, man, it totally caught me off guard the first time I had it. I was like, this is sensational.
It's interesting that you don't, I can sip it without it. I can actually sip this. I don't need to be throwing them back. What, do you know the story with these guys?
I really don't. Like I said, I stumbled on it, you know, not too long before that show that we did together, you know, a little over a year ago. And I was drinking it that night. I don't know, for like, I don't know, I think that might've still been my first bottle, to be honest with you. And I was just like, this is fantastic. And I mean, I had gone out and bought a case of it before I finished that first bottle. I mean, it was just terrific. I mean, and the price is killer on it too, when you think about it.
Yeah, that's why I'm shocked, especially for the size of the bottle.
Size of the bottle. Well, and then like, you know, the brand, you know, I mean, taking it at face value, like the label is ornate. It's got beautiful colors and stuff, but it's also it's kind of, you know, it's a little plain, you know, there's not too much to it, you know.
But this is like real deal Mexico. You know what I mean? I feel like you find this like right in Mexico.
Yeah, you go into any,
you know what I mean?
Any dive in Mexico, and you like find a bottle of Corlejo, and you're like,
yeah, this is like the real deal.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's really pleasant. It actually goes really well with the cigar right now because it does have some strength to it, but again, it's not overpowering in the palate, and it's not really biting on the back of my throat, and it's actually pairing well with the strength of the cigar.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Nice.
So,
this is dangerous.
So Nick, another question that was mentioned earlier too, and I think this is probably a question you've been asked probably at least dozens of times. I know most manufacturers are, but I think it's, again, in the spirit of tonight, I think it's kind of worth asking again. And again, I think I know your answer, but I won't answer for you this time. I'll let you do the honors. But you know, you manufacture a lot of different types of cigars, different blends, all along the spectrum, everything from non-traditional cigars and the upsetters lines that we were talking about, you know, pre-show, to, you know, the Wise Man Maduro, the Tabernacle, like really beefy, you know, in your face, full bodied cigars, mild cigars, medium bodied, like it's all over the map. Regions, tobaccos, everything. What, you know, so the question was, how do you manufacture a cigar that you don't particularly like, but you know is for other people? And I'm interested to get your, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let you, I'm not going to try to sway it this time.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, is that a question coming from you, or was
no?
It's
a question from the chat. So it's a question from the chat.
Oh, okay, great question. I would say, really, the only cigar in my portfolio that I would say I don't smoke consistently would be the Upsetters infused line. I smoke for quality control. I do smoke for the flavor to make sure it's right. Otherwise, the other lines I smoke pretty consistently because I like different things. I tend personally to like, you know, if I had to choose, I'm going towards the fuller bodied medium to medium plus to full in strength. If I had to choose, but High Claire, the High Claire Connecticut, I'll smoke in the morning. I'll smoke in the, lunchtime. The Victorian is a perfect medium bodied. Charter Oak, if I'm out doing, outside, if you're doing something, and I'm not really paying attention to it as much, or I'm on the move, or I'm on the trade, doing a trade show or something like that. Wise Man Maduro, I smoke consistently, and Wednesday I smoke consistently. I really try to make a portfolio of blends in all these different categories, from blends to, and also price points, because again, like we said at the beginning, I'm a cigar smoker first and foremost. And I just tend to have a wide range of things that I like. Some people only like one thing, other people, I think more and more in the market today, people smoke of a plethora of different things. So,
I certainly do. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm, again, I got a box of Charter Oaks here. I got a box of Wednesdays. I'm constantly smoking these cigars, not just for, again, quality control and work, but I enjoy different blends. The upsetters, I started early, in the 90s smoking, having worked a cigar shop. Again, you're trying to find the best matchup with the customer you're dealing with, and every customer has a different flavor profile that they prefer. I'm not here to kind of force my flavor profiles or what I like on people. I want to know what they enjoy, and then I want to try to find the right product for them. And that's how I kind of got started in understanding the infused market, the blends, even though I don't personally would be, buying them or smoking them, I started to smoke them and try to understand it from the consumer's, level of what they like. And then I've been fortunate to work on a ton of infused projects over the years. So I kind of got a hang of understanding, other people's palates. And then I take that approach when I'm working on the blends. But I've been fortunate to really, work in the retail side of things, be a cigar nerd myself, be a cigar consumer, and then being able to move to Nicaragua and then learn, the other side of the business. It's enabled me to have a wide range of understanding of, I think, blends and the consumer's palate in the United States. And I think that's tough for some manufacturers per se, or tough for others that don't have the experience within the American market, or have never kind of experienced, being in the rest of the United States and working cigar shops. That can kind of limit your knowledge of, what people are looking for and what people want. Does that make sense?
No,
Am I
100%.
jumping around?
No, absolutely. No, I think it makes total sense. The thing one of the things that I really like today is that there just a lot of people are kind of taking that approach that you have, which is kind of just, really kind of playing the field a little bit more, and it really discovering out there. And I think we're seeing this kind of this interesting renaissance. So like the boom happened in the 90s and you actually joined the industry at the tail end of the boom. But you probably still saw the unfortunate remnant of byproduct.
Dude,
of
I started right at it was probably at its peak, and then just started to turn. When I started, the two ladies I worked for, first week handed me 2 garbage bags filled with cigars that they had gotten from the trade show, the RTDA that year, and said, "You're in charge of bringing in new brands into the humidor." So that's kind of when I started. So I got to see what happened during the boom, and it was a disaster. So many people coming out with brands, people just trying to make a quick buck, people not understanding the consumers, branding, things of this nature. So Bear,
Well,
I gotta like the cigar. You know what I'm saying? I gotta
yeah.
like it, no matter what it is. I have to smoke it and want to keep smoking it. You understand what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
I got it. This is how all the blend. If I'm not smoking, if I'm not wowed by it, then there's no way I'm coming out with it. And again, that's for all different, all of them. And again, I got it when I'm smoking. You know, the upsetters are doing an infused. I got to wear my hat of the infused, smoker.
Oh, absolutely. Like that. Like it's almost like you have to put yourself in that place, and then like we hear all the time too, and this is there unfortunately there's still some manufacturers that are really guilty of this too, that they cannibalize their own product, right? And so you have to be wary of that too, especially in the world that you operate in, Nick, because you're a small boutique brands. Like, I mean, you've positioned Foundation incredibly well. It's a really well-known brand, but comparatively speaking, I mean, it's in terms of like quantity, right? It's small potatoes compared to some other manufacturers. And so like you have to be weary, and you have to be diligent about that and the approach that you take. And I think that's something you've done incredibly well, because
Appreciate it.
we've talked about the
I've
variety of
worked
stuff
on it.
that you worked. Yeah, exactly. The stuff that you've worked on. Like, well, and to that point about like the boom, like there were cigars in those trash bags that probably belonged in those trash bags and not being served a lid. Like,
Oh, dude, 100%, 100%. Don
it
Nobodies, we call them.
it was bad. Like there were cigars that were like
Yeah.
legitimately bad. Like there's like it's really funny. Like today, like we live in this renaissance, and we live in this spoiled era of cigars where like I talk to people that were around during the boom, and then there was stuff that was just garbage, like absolute garbage. And like that word gets thrown around sometimes today with some cigars that aren't like that don't hit your palate right. Like, oh, this cigar
Yeah.
sucks. It's terrible. And like, so I'll give this example, right? I'm not even pulling any punches here. Like, and you and I've had this discussion. I'm not the cigar in your portfolio that just doesn't hit my palate is the Menelik, but it's a good cigar, and for the people whose palate's right, I mean, it's good. Like like it's not trash, and I'm not saying that because I'm talking to you, but like it doesn't hit my palate, but it doesn't make it a terrible. The construction's great. It burns technically flawless. The tobaccos are good. Everything's well fermented. Like it.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
the
all
way
there.
that marries that doesn't speak to me personally.
And that's the beauty of our industry and having a variety. And we are living in an incredible time. For that. Unfortunately, in the boom in the 90s, a lot of things got messed up on the supply side in the tobacco market, and the actual buying and selling of tobacco, because you had people that were entering the market that didn't know what they were doing, and then they were also paying crazy prices for leaf and things that they didn't know what they were doing, and people were selling leaf, people were maximizing that changed this time around. I think everybody learned from the tobacco side of things. Relationships were really built over time, and people honor these relationships more than ever. So when you have people that are coming into the market, it's not getting as messed up as it was back then, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's lessons learned from the past. Like I've heard from like Manuel Casada, how people were stealing rollers left and right. So consistency was bad. So it's not even just the tobacco was like under fermented and you were trying to, beg, borrow, and plead and stuff like that. But I mean, he told me once in a conversation, like how rollers were getting stolen right from underneath him. And so when when you were having inconsistency problems too, from just a manufacturing standpoint, you don't even have the same person rolling the cigar that was there a week ago.
Yeah, and that's a huge problem. Unfortunately, we're having a bit of that problem with people leaving to the States and the U.S. border being more open than I think it's been in a long time. So you have a big influx of people heading to the States. So you have a tremendous amount of people in training right now in factories. This is one of the reasons too for a lot of back order situations and things being slow, because again, the manufacturers know, I think more than ever, quality and consistency, has to always be there. But you have a combination of demand being higher over the past 2 years, and then people leaving, and then everybody knows the problems with supply chain. But then also, a lot of people have been leaving Honduras, Nicaragua, going across the border.
Absolutely. So, like, looking back here at the last 2 years and the craziness that it's been, from Foundation, like it was really, really unfortunate set of events. You celebrated your 5th anniversary as a company in 2020. So how did that? So we've heard kind of like reflectively that more cigars are being smoked more than ever. People are having great years and stuff, but it's still I guess wasn't the same in a lot of ways, or maybe it was. How did you feel your 5th anniversary cigar, the David and Goliath, line extensions, like those? I feel like in any normal year, that would have been just so much bigger than what it was because of the circumstances. How do you feel it went?
Yeah, it went well. With the 5th anniversary, it was tough because the presentation, the box that we ended up presenting, the cigar itself was very difficult. I think the box is it's like a piece of furniture.
Yeah.
The 5th year anniversary, it's
gorgeous.
I call it the Voltron box. That box proved to be quite the challenge. And then production on that Perfecto, it's a 4 3/4 by 60 Perfecto, is a challenge, more of a challenge on the production floor. And then all the COVID madness hit. So we ended up having delays in the release, but I can't complain, man, because everything sold. I wish I had more at the time. I actually, because we were so backed up, still have, there's going to be we're only producing that cigar was for our 5th year. Mm-hmm. But since we were delayed in coming out with it, I still have about 200 more boxes in the pipeline. So if you see them out in the shelves, grab them, because they're not going to be around for long. This is the last. I just wanted to do it. Yeah, it's the last hurrah. So again, we were just delayed in the release of the cigar, but I can't complain. David and Goliath has just been, nonstop. We can't make enough of those. That's a regular limited production item that we really do more on a quarterly basis. Okay. And that cigar has just had a huge reception in the market. I mean, I think the problem is people can't get them all the time. So, but again, difficult cigar to make. We had a number of issues with, tobacco taking longer in the fermentation piles than originally anticipated. So it's been a little bit slow, but we're hoping, this year will be a little bit more steady. So
that's good. That's good to hear. Well, yeah, I was interested to get your perspective on that, because I feel like, it just kind of made me feel sad, because I feel like the celebration would have been just so much more. Just wouldn't have been so much more.
Man, it's tough, man. It was definitely tough. It gave me a chance to slow down, because I was on a schedule that I don't think was sustainable. So in that sense, I think COVID came for me personally at a time where I needed to actually slow down and be in one spot and not on a plane every 2 weeks. But it was tough. I was just felt very fortunate, man, to be in business. So many people lost businesses or weren't able to open their businesses. We were very concerned about the brick and mortars and the retail shops. The first couple of months was scary when COVID hit. So I just been really fortunate that, we're in business. The brand and the company has been growing. the awareness of the brand has been growing throughout the humidors. My whole goal is always to, really build Foundation and to be a staple within the humidors across the country. So I felt very fortunate that we've been able to do that and continue it. Hopefully our 10-year anniversary will not have all these challenges.
Well,
I hope.
That's an interesting kind of, you kind of segued into my next question with that. So it's a two-part question, and I want the focus of it to be on the first part of it, but I think it'd be interesting to get a similar take on the second part of it. The first part of my question is, and you actually were asked this question in the Percy Crawford interview. Where, do you think is Foundation Cigar, at, now 7 years in, 2022, 7 years in, is it
six?
Well, it's the beginning of 22. Yeah, I guess 2015.
Right.
2015, right? You started in 2015.
October 2015.
Yeah, so it'll be 7 later this year. So yeah, is it, 6 years in, is it where you wanted it to be? Is it everything you wanted it to be?
It is. For me personally, I didn't even think about it when I started. I went all out, just from the beginning. I didn't even really plan it out in a way, which I probably should have early on. Originally I was hoping to bring on investors, and I did have this great elaborate plan, but then at the last minute, I decided not to take on investors, not to go that route, and start it much smaller than I originally anticipated. It was, the company hadn't even started yet, getting investors, pre-valuation, that whole thing. And I started the company really to have the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And to me, borrowing money from people, I'm a no debt kind of guy. So I didn't want to start, with a good chunk of the company being out of my hands and then having the pressure of paying people back. So I said, let me start it small. So we started with Wawense. And it was really just all passion, man, to start. And then as the years went on, I had all these other brands in the lineup. We didn't have tobaccos online yet. But to answer your question, it is, I'm really just happy with the response of the brands in the humidor, all the support, from guys like you, all the hardcore guys in the industry, the retailers. I mean, it's been humbling to see the reception, and for really people to learn about, the story of Foundation and my story, because I was virtually kind of unknown to the market up until 2015. I mean, I was always behind the scenes, always,
unless you were
on
a
the
nerd
Nicaraguan
like me.
side of things.
Right.
Yeah. Or came down to the factory to visit. And so it was really those, hardcore guys like yourself that really started it for me, and really helped with the awareness of the brand and recommending Foundation to consumers, and having the confidence in the brands to recommend them to consumers, that really set it off for us. And I've been learning a lot about sales and distribution. It's just been a constant learning experience for me. Of course, still learning. That doesn't stop.
Right.
But it's really fascinating, the sales and distribution side. I always say there's 3 parts to this business. Farming, that's a world unto itself. Fermentation, pre-industry manufacturing, that's a world unto itself. Sales and distribution, that's a world unto itself. So that was the big piece, that was missing. And it's been flattering to see the growth of the brand over the years, and just to see brand awareness and how that works, and how it's been growing. And it's constant, man. I mean, we're constantly working on messaging, communication with our brick and mortar shops with final consumers, and really educating people as to what Foundation's all about.
It's funny you mentioned a comment a couple of minutes ago about just being like an unknown, and to my audience that might seem kind of funny, but there's actually some truth to that, because like I remember having that conversation when the story broke about you leaving Drew Estate. It was a topic of conversation in the cigar shop in Michael's Tobacco where I worked, and there were people who just didn't know. They're like, Barry, is this a big deal? And I was like, you have no idea how big of a deal this is. And 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 it was conversations like those that I'm sure that a lot of tobacconists like myself were having during that time, that, I'm not saying I'm responsible for that awareness, but I think you're spot on in saying, like, there, to a select few of us, you had this tremendous impact in your early career, that's obviously led to your success. But Foundation is truly all you in a lot of ways, in what you've built and the awareness that you've brought amongst yourself, because we used the term layman earlier, right? The layman smoker is now aware of that story, and that just wasn't, that they wouldn't have or didn't know in years past. So that leads me to the second part of the question. And like I said, I wanted to focus more on the Foundation piece, but and I don't think you were like creatively handcuffed or by any way, shape, or form in your years at Drew Estate. But I noticed, like, your style, you focus a lot on, there's and not that there's not story behind Drew Estate or anything like that, or sometimes, but you invest so much in history. Like, history is a big part of you. I think that's why we're kindred spirits, you and I. History is a big part of Foundation story. And that just wasn't kind of the bag, so to speak, at Drew Estate. Like, it is, I'm not saying that's the reason you left, far from it. I'm just saying, it was that really exciting for you, that you got to embrace your love of history so that you could do it the way you wanted to?
Yes. I mean, it was very, very exciting. And the DE side, I wasn't involved, on the state side of thing or the branding side of thing. The only project I was involved in was the Nica Rustica at the end there. That was the first project I was involved from a branding side of things. But otherwise, that wasn't my role. My role was tobacco production, blending, quality control, everything, from the DE Nicaragua side. So it was one of the reasons, not the main reason. The main reason was just seeing all this FDA stuff coming down the pipeline and realizing, hey, maybe if I don't spread my wings now, I might not be able to ever.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
And the thought of that was really the crux of it. I love the Nicaragua side and being in Nicaragua. So that wasn't, I could have been happy not being known on the US side of things and just being around tobacco, because it doesn't get old for me. I walk into a tobacco barn and it's like the first time every time. That's how much of a geek I am. I can take pictures of tobacco barns. That's all my phone
You do?
has.
What are you talking about? You do?
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, that's your entire IG feed is like tobacco leaves in your hands and dirt and stuff. I love it, man. And and it's 100% genuine, which is the best part about it. It's 100% sincere, and I
love it, man. It's being around tobacco, being just around the plant, and the whole process. It's amazing. So to be able, having worked on blends and that side of things for so long, to then be able to create brands to complement the blends, and to use brands and imagery of things that I'm passionate about in my life, that was definitely rewarding. It's still rewarding to be able to, complement these blends with imagery. And to me, the packaging and the branding, that's what it should do, right? Is complement what the tobacco is. That's the foundation, not to be cliche, is the tobacco. The growing, the seed varieties, the land, the quality control, the fermentation, the production. That's what makes a an amazing cigar. But then also to have the brand that, really complements that is to me what really creates the magic, right? That kind of brings it all together. So, my best friend from Esteli, Nicaragua, his name is Alex Garcia. He's the company's art director. We'd known each other since 2003, 2004. He's just an amazing artist, that started in the streets, graffiti art, and really over the years has just self-taught himself from a graphic design standpoint, how to, the band designs, the box designs. So the both of us together are really, two sides of the same coin. And, when I started the company and told them what I wanted to do, we just have a lot of the same interests in culture and history. And, the brands to me have different levels to them, and you can see them at the face value. Then there's other layers that if you want to, you can get into them, but they kind of run deep. And it's because history, culture, it's what fascinates me. It's, I always wanted to understand why things are the reason why they are, if that makes sense. Why do we do things? And if you don't really look at history, you really don't understand why things are the way they are. One of my favorite quotes is, a person without the true knowledge of their past is like a tree without roots. And I think that's kind of true.
I mean, there's so much to what you're saying today in tonight's conversation and conversations of the past too, that are like, if you sit and listen to yourself speak for any length of time, doesn't matter who's interviewing you, you can hear the story of the brands, even without you talking about them specifically. You talk about the roots of trees and that quote, and that immediately makes me think of Charter Oak. You talked about one of the biggest motivators for you to start your own brand. There you go. One of the reasons to start your own brand was because the FDA was looming, and you're like, if I don't do this now, I never will. And you captivate that, you capture that imagery in the David and Goliath vitolas that you've introduced. And it's really the thing that I really like, one of the things that really fascinates me about you, Nick, is that you strike me as a very very studious and academic in a lot of ways. You still strike me as a very spiritual person, and not spiritual in the context of like how we view spirituality in this country of like, church on Sunday, very religious, and you might very well me. I'm not necessarily going down that road, but you just strike me as a very spiritual person, to go with that academia side. Is that a fair assessment of your character, you think?
Man, that's very accurate. And I don't tend to align myself with, creeds or different religions. To me, it's life, man. We're all going in the same direction, whether we like it or not. It's just a reality of life. And to me, cigar smoking, that when I started smoking cigars and looking into the history of cigar smoking, it's this ceremony in the modern day that we're all partaking in. And, the history of tobacco amongst the indigenous, we're still learning about how tobacco was. I don't know if you saw a couple months ago, they had been doing a dig out in Utah, and they found a 12,000-year-old site, and they found tobacco there, which is now predating the original, everything we thought we knew, the academic side of things of when tobacco was used. They had really traced it back to maybe 4,000, 5,000, if you're lucky, BC. But now this puts us at 12,000. And tobacco was used, not only as medicinally and as a pleasure ceremony for, peace pipes, we know, but it was a sacred plant, especially amongst all of the shaman cultures throughout the Americas, Central America, and into South America. So to me, it was, smoking a cigar was always just this calming. It kind of brings you to the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without messing up your, taking any psychoactive substances. The cigar unites you with the present. That's really what it became for me, as a tool to, really be present and enjoy the moment. And, it's great when you can do that with people and the camaraderie. And I think that's what really attracts a lot of people, right? Is this camaraderie that we have within the industry. So it's definitely, I don't like to talk about it too much, but yeah, I tend to be a spiritual person.
Well, you talk about community there, Nick, and you talk about how it brings one together. And this is something I've expounded on probably every single one of my 202 takes at this point. It's you can't, it's synonymous. You can't talk about cigars and not talk about community in a lot of ways, mostly because of the people who I have the privilege of speaking with, like yourself. But you specifically have this way. We started tonight's show talking about how you, as an individual and Foundation by proxy, have kind of broken through in a lot of ways into secular culture. The snapshot of Michael Jordan with a box of Wise Man Maduros, the your relationship and friendship with the Earl of Carnarvon and royalty of Ethiopia. You were covered by the NBC affiliate there in Connecticut, talking about small business and the tobacco farming, and in this piece by Percy Crawford. And then, of course, I mean, the most infamous relationship that's developed because of what you do, is the latest project with Joe. Well, not even a project. I mean, it just came about because he started smoking cigars and landed on yours. It's Joe Rogan. So talk a little bit about this. I mean, that I think that was just as shocking to you as it was to everybody else. Am I right about that? Did that catch you off guard like it caught everyone else did?
It's still shocking. I'm still shocked. It's awesome. Yeah, totally shocking. No, this is not a planned thing. A good friend of mine out in California saw that I love Joe. I've been listening to Joe since probably 2012. To me, listening to Joe Bear was almost like what the experience in the cigar shop has been for me at an early age, right? I was 18 when I started working in the shop. You're meeting people from all different walks of life, from all different professions, and they're all coming together in this one place, and they wouldn't normally come together if it wasn't for cigars. So being able to learn from all these different people at a young age really opened up my mind and perception of the world. And I was learning a lot, just, having those humidor discussions, man. You can get into some really awesome discussions about so many different topics, and then also personal discussions and trials and tribulations people are going through. That's what, Joe's podcast became kind of that for me. And he started it, and I don't think he ever intended that it would ever become this big, or he'd have so much of the spotlight on him, but it's happened because I think he's just pursuing his truth, and pursuing the truth for himself, and trying to learn from all these different walks of life. So my buddy had known that I just loved Joe, and then we noticed that he really started smoking cigars there a little bit here and there. And then my buddy was like, I'm going to get cigars to Joe for you. Get me some cigars, and I'm going to make this happen. I was like, all right, well, let's. So I talked to my buddy Alex, and I was like, Alex, we need to do some hand painted boxes. I actually have a box here that I didn't send him yet. I'll show it to you. And we did a couple boxes, one with his logo, and then we made him a Nicaraguan shaman on one of the boxes. And it was all when this COVID situation was going down, and Joe ends up deciding to move out of California to Texas. So nothing was happening. It was like 2 months. There was nothing. My guy's contacts wasn't working out. And I told my buddy, hey, go easy. It's going to happen. Like, the last thing you want to get when you're moving is another box. So let's not, because I had that nice little care package. So it wasn't happening. And then through the grace of the universe, we ended up becoming friends with one of Joe's good friends, who happened to be going to Texas to visit Joe that weekend. And he was a fellow cigar smoker, and he brought the boxes to Joe. And I put an ashtray in there and a cutter. Didn't hear anything for like 2 months. And then one day, I usually listen to Joe as I'm working on spreadsheets and stuff in the back. And I was just sitting there one day, and I looked up and I said, son of a gun, I saw our ashtray in the middle of the podcast. It was hiding behind bottles of water. And then I went back to notice it. September 11th, 2020 was the first day the ashtray is on the show. And it's been there ever since, right in the middle of every guest. And then it was like a couple months later, it was election day. I saw the box on his desk for the first time, and he busted them out. We're Wise Man Maduros, Robustos. Mm-hmm. And he started smoking them. And then from that time on, man, he must have given us 10, 15 shout outs.
Yeah.
Just nonstop. So he ended up hitting me up on Instagram, which was awesome.
Surreal, I'm sure.
Surreal. And he's like, yo, man, I'm thinking about getting a humidor for the studio. You got any recommendations and this and that? I said, Joe, I already got you. So I had a humidor that I had in process for him with his logo. It was hand inlaid. I had Eli Blue make it for him.
Oh, snap.
And then I got him one with the American flag on it. So if you see on his desk in the back under the TV, you'll see the 2 humidors. And just this past week, he's got a box of Charter Oaks next to him. And he's got a box of Menelik. And then I ended up making him his own cigar, because I was like, this guy needs his own cigar. And then the rest has just been history, man. It's crazy.
It's awesome. Yeah, the cigar thing made it like, it just, hearing him talk about it too, and it's like you talk about, it's surreal. Like, it's not my brand, and I don't work for you, but it was such a moment of pride for me as a cigar consumer. It was such a proud moment for me as a person of media, because I was like, because I know how hard you work, and and it was very fitting because of what I've just described a few moments of, like how you've kind of broken the wall, the fourth, the metaphorical fourth wall of, cigars are great for people in our circle, and for people like, Carlito Fuente, for example, right? He, in our world, he's the stuff of legend. He's an icon, and it's sad that man could walk into an airport and in America, and like there's people that don't know who this great man is. It blows like my mind. It blows your mind. It blows anyone who's like watching the show. Like, that happens. Like, it does. And
it's a blessing and a curse.
Right.
That could be a blessing and a curse, right? Yeah.
But you've somehow kind of transcended that fourth wall and broken it down in a lot of ways. And I think this was an interesting kind of way to do it. And I mean, your brand has been exposed to millions because of his viewership, and people who never thought anything about cigars, and then all of a sudden Foundation's right there in their face, and then he's, like I said, like you said, he's I love that he gives you shout outs on it. You know, it's just like, oh, this is the
Yeah.
cigar I'm smoking. I love it. It's
He doesn't
Foundation
have to
Cigars.
do that.
He does.
Yeah. I mean, he's not getting
He's got paid sponsors. He doesn't have to do that.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. No, definitely, man. And that's what makes it's definitely, I did it. It's awesome, of course, for exposure and marketing and everything, but it came from a place of just passion and love for, you know, what he's doing and just being a fan of his. And just for me, it's important, I think, to have someone like him expose people to the world of handmade cigars. You know, that's the tough. We are such a small part, I think, of the population that really know about this world of handmade cigars. So I think it's so important for, you know, non-smokers and smokers to really understand the art of the handmade cigar, and for him to be able to have that platform. You know, I hope he continues to take steps to kind of learn more and more. I was sending him some messages from Nicaragua, just showing him, you know, the fermentation piles and you know, the steps that go into handmade cigars. So it was cool to see him. He really did it during Sober October. He does those Sober Octobers and really got into cigars that month, and that sort of kicked it all off. But I think it's just great in general to have that exposure for people to, hopefully he'll get into it more and more.
We need to really get him to the trade show. That would be fantastic.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to get him to the farms too, and just to, you know, see some of the process. I sent him that Seed to Cigar video that I made, the time lapse. Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So I think he really enjoyed that one. Yeah, it opens up your world, man, to really, because if you don't know, you've never been exposed to it. And I think sometimes it is overwhelming, you know, it's overwhelming to people that are just haven't been exposed to it. And, you know, more of your common smokers, it can be intimidating and overwhelming. Yeah.
So you made that cigar for him. Is that a special blend? Is it undisclosed?
So
is it similar to another blend that you made?
It's similar to Tabernacle. So when I made up Tabernacle, I had 7 different blends that for me could have made the cut. So one of those 7 made it. I ended up using one of those other 7 blends for his blend. So it's a Connecticut Broadleaf.
Okay.
And then a tweaked version of the Tabernacle blend. So we made the band. It's actually in the shape of a UFC belt.
Oh, perfect.
Which is kind of nice. Yeah. So, and the bands came out great. And, you know, it's interesting because his flavor profile, for not, I think, having smoked a lot of cigars over the years, I could tell just based on his love for the Wise Man Maduro blend. And then he really loves like barbecue, spicy. He likes, you know, different scotches, more of those peaty. I knew that blend would kind of fit his flavor profile. And yeah, he's just in love with the blend. He sent me a message. He's like, man, it's one of the best cigars I've ever smoked.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
How surreal. Just how surreal indeed.
It's crazy, dude.
So this question kind of leads us into our, what I call our fun segments for the night. And we could always kicks off with our One Must Go segment, which is brought to you by United Cigar. United Cigar is the reason that we have Nick on tonight. They always sponsor our guest as well. So United Cigars features La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. So smoke one today and start living united. Now, Nick, this is our One Must Go segment. You took part in this last time I had you on. We asked you about the Marley family and the musicians in that. And so I wanted to take a different spin on this. And so, you know, it was very, very sad and unfortunate because I know how close you were to your grandfather, and you lost him during COVID. And I know that was a huge loss for your family, and I know how close you were to him. So I wanted to honor your grandfather tonight in this segment in a different way. And I would like to ask you to answer for him. So if you no doubt you would love to have dinner with your grandfather again.
Yeah.
And while two of these other people that I'm about to mention are still alive, one is not. I would ask you to answer for your grandfather. If your grandfather had to say, you know what, I'm sorry, you'll have to wait. Only two other seats at this table. It's me, it's my grandson, Nick, and it's these two other people, but he's got to choose between these three people. So here we go. Grandfather has to pick for dinner guests, Bob Marley, the Earl of Carnarvon, and Joe Rogan. Who's he asking to wait outside?
So one of those?
One of those. He's got to say, I'm sorry. You're not going to be at this dinner.
He would probably choose the Earl of Carnarvon.
Okay. Why do you think?
I think, it would be a close to Joe, because I don't think he was just aware of Joe in general, but the Earl of Carnarvon, I think it would be one of those, honors for him, just as far as historically speaking. He was probably very aware of his grandfather who discovered King Tut's tune, and just being the godson to the Queen. I think that would definitely hook him.
So the Earl would make the cut. The Earl would make the cut.
Earl would make the cut. Yes,
okay.
Lord Carnarvon would make the cut.
Okay. So between Bob Marley and Joe Rogan, who else makes the dinner table then?
Joe would make the cut.
Okay. So Bob's gonna wait outside. Okay.
I think Bob might have to wait outside. I don't know if I would let him have that happen.
That must be painful for you.
But yeah, that would be very painful. But he would like Bob in the sense of musician. He was a jazz drummer. So I think they would really connect on that level, from a music level. So, man, that's a tough question, Bear. Man, how can I leave one of those for you?
Well, I'm not asking you.
I'd have to clear the table. I'd have to clear the table. I'd give up my seat.
You know what, Grandpa? You're going to have dinner with them. You know what? I'll sit outside. You're going to have dinner with these three gentlemen.
Yeah. I think I think Bob, he would really connect yeah, I think he would get along with Joe pretty well, and Joe would absolutely love him. I mean, I think Joe would have him on his podcast.
I didn't know
My
he was a musician.
He was a big band and jazz drummer for the longest time, and ever since he was a Marine. Yeah. So
wow.
He used to play locally a lot here in Connecticut, New Haven. There's a big jazz scene, so he loved music. For him, until the day he passed, it was a huge part of his life. I was fortunate to inherit his vinyl collection, and I have some pretty amazing vinyl from his collection. That is a lot of stuff from the 40s, 50s, big band, jazz. Yeah. Some incredible records. So I still don't have them all displayed quite right, but yeah, that was him, man. And the pipe, and he was a big pipe smoker, and his favorite cigar size is Lanceros. Hence I made Lanceros for the Wawense. Most of my lines have Lanceros in them, but that was his size. He loved Lanceros. If you had anything in front, he'd always go with the Lancero. That was his.
That's awesome.
That was his size. Yeah. Ever since I can remember, that was his size, Lancero.
So big band. That's a different foray for you, at least from what I know. I mean, you're so synonymous with reggae and everything, but I know you appreciate music. So
I love music, man. I can get down with jazz, blues. The big band stuff I've been getting into a little bit more. I'm got to get my my setup here for the vinyl, kind of in that flux stage of moving stuff around. So once I get my record player going, that big band and jazz is going to be going a lot.
That's awesome.
I think we might have a lot of big band and jazz at the trade show this year.
There you go.
Gonna have to get that going.
So that is thank you, Nick. That is our One Must Go segment, as always, brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. Smoke one today and start living united. Before we go into this next segment, which I'm really excited to hear you talk about, so you've said it a couple of times tonight. I know it's a question that I know was on everyone's mind. You weren't able to attend last year's PCA. From my understanding, you had some family commitments.
Yep.
Belated congratulations to your parents, right? It was a 45th or 50th anniversary, right?
45th. Yeah.
Wow, wonderful. 45 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We're big supporters of the PCA. You know, when I had to make the decision last year, the COVID situation was still raging. And, you know, I missed so many family things over the years. I said, it was February, March when we made the decision. And at that time, everything was still kind of closed and whatnot. So it was tough because we started at the show, you know, so we're really looking forward to making it this year and seeing everybody again.
Well, everyone's going to love having you back. Yeah, everyone's going to love having you back. It's going to be awesome. It's great to hear that you'll be back. But
yeah,
so this next segment has become my favorite since we launched it just a few weeks after the last time you were on my show, Nick, and it's been really great hearing different stories and different people talk about the causes that really matter to them. And this is my charity segment where each week I ask my guest to highlight or spotlight a charity or a nonprofit of their choosing. And so you selected the Norwalk, forgive me if I mispronounce it, the Norwalk Nagarote Sister City Project. And looks like, I mean, from what I was reading about it, a beautiful foundation where it goes to really towards the community, nutrition, education. Talk to us a little bit more about this charity. Why did you pick to spotlight it tonight?
So this is actually a newer charity, Bear. Actually, within the past couple of months that I became aware of. So I just really started supporting these guys, but they're local here in Connecticut. And one of my coworkers came, one of their people approached us with it. And Norwalk is the sister city, Norwalk, Connecticut, of Nagarote, Nicaragua, which is really on the way from Managua to Leon, alongside the Lake Managua, which is a pretty beautiful area. And it was kind of impressive to see what they're doing. So they're really working with the community there for scholarships I think they do scholarships for about 67 students for high school and what we would consider like junior high school. They also have scholarships for college programs. They're doing sustainable farming practices in the area. So doing educational farming practices, reforestation projects.
Oh, wow.
They have a plan for 2,000 trees. So I just really started learning about them and took to them. So I think it's cool to see, someone in Connecticut doing a charity for Nicaragua. It's pretty amazing, the connection there. Which is interesting because I used to spend time in Colorado and in Boulder, and their sister city was Jalapa, Nicaragua.
Oh, okay.
So you have these kind of sister city things going on, which a lot of people aren't really too aware of, that a lot of these towns have sister cities in other parts of the world. So it's seems like a really great organization that's doing some real good in a small community in Nicaragua.
Well, what a perfect charity for you, right? Connecticut's own son benefiting the people of Nicaragua, your adopted country. It writes itself.
It's not a bad one. We used to do a lot of work with Techo, which was an organization building houses in Nicaragua. But I'm starting to branch out and do a little bit more with different organizations, also with SOS, the adoption program that they have there in Nicaragua. They have a great program that helps adopted. They actually take in children that have no parents and kind of take them on and have their own community. Originally, I think they're out of Costa Rica. And I'm really going to start working too over the next year or so. It's with some Ethiopian organizations, so out in Ethiopia.
Oh, that'll be great. I know that'll be really good,
Yeah.
close to your heart too. No,
you might see a project soon that will be benefiting some charity organizations. So
that'll be great. That'll be wonderful. Yeah, this is we actually funnily enough, we featured Tesho, Ram Rodriguez of the Dominican.
Oh, you did?
El Artista selected
cool.
Tesho, yeah, as his charity. So
Nice.
that was really good. And like this, you mentioned some of the stuff that they're doing. Purchase of computers for students, nutrition classes, a tutoring program for 70 children, scholarships for 67 students, sustainable farming courses, the reforestation program. 2,000 trees have been planted by this organization. I mean, they're all over the place, and they're doing a lot of great things for that community there in Nagarote. Yeah. So,
yeah, if anybody's listening, you can go to sistercityproject.org.
Yeah, I posted it in the chat. I'll be putting it in the show notes later. Perfect. Yeah, check it out. Excellent. And I encourage everyone, as always, we really encourage people to check it out. And, if you feel called, please give. Every little bit helps to every organization that we mentioned on the show. And later tonight, Nick, as I do every week, my wife and I decided when we started this project that I will be donating a small amount in your honor later tonight to this organization. So, we're really excited to be able to do that for you. And what a fabulous organization. I was really excited that you brought this up because I hadn't heard of it. And you're right, the Sister City program all around the world is really fascinating. If you look at you can look it up, look up your hometown, wherever you are, and your town, your city, your community has a sister city somewhere else in the world, maybe multiple actually. So pretty cool stuff there.
Cool, man.
So two more questions, Nick, for tonight. And again, I can't thank you enough for your time this evening. I know you got an early morning.
My pleasure.
So this is a newer segment, and we'll be kind of formally debuting it here in the next couple of weeks. But I thought it would be a great time to kind of debut it a little unofficially, and that's I'm calling it the Solitude Moment. So we talked, or this is actually perfect because we talked earlier today tonight about how cigars are very much community driven and it's very community oriented. The ceremony of smoking cigars has been about the people around you. But there are those moments where it's just you and the cigar, and it's a perfect memory. It's the perfect moment in a lot of ways. Has there been a moment that comes to memory that you would characterize as, very memorable, the best moment where it was just you and the cigar? What was that experience like? Where were you? Tell us a little bit about that if you have one.
That's a great question. I do really enjoy smoking a cigar by myself too, and just having, some alone time and maybe a book or some music. Trying to think, there's been a bunch of those moments. I would say one that sticks out for me would probably be in the countryside of France, man. Back in my traveling days, I was backpacking around Europe, and I ended up living in a Buddhist community outside of Bordeaux that was started by this Vietnamese monk who just actually passed last month. He was like 95, and he had been exiled from Vietnam during the war and set up this community in France. And it was one of the most beautiful, it's called Plum Village outside of Bordeaux, France. It was an old wine vineyard that they had purchased, and at that time was smoking a lot of Monte Cristo number 4s, because that's all that's not all I could get, but that was more of the widely distributed Cuban cigars in Italy at the time when I was living there. So I had some packs on me, and I was away from the community at the time, just watching the sunset out in the field, smoking a Monte 4, watching the sunset. The sunsets there were just breathtaking. So it's one of those moments you can still, even though it was 20 something years ago, it was still one that still stands out in my mind.
A Buddhist community in Bordeaux, France. That's got to be the most
Isn't that
random.
wild? Yeah, man. I was smoking cigars. Yeah.
So you said
I had to do it away from everybody, so nobody saw me. Nobody saw me.
So you kept in touch with these people, though. You said the monk passed away.
No, I followed them. I haven't really kept in touch with him. His name is Thich Nhat Hanh. He's written a lot of books that have been on like New York bestsellers and stuff. He taught what they call mindfulness. So it wasn't just meditation and sitting meditation. It was pretty much everything you do meditation, walking meditation, working meditation. It was just more about being present in the moment. So his teachings became pretty well known amongst those communities. And I had the pleasure of being there while he was there, and to have lunch with him actually in the group. And yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. But yeah, I was there for maybe almost a month there. Yeah. Just showed up, backpack, and they kind of welcomed me in.
Sounds like from his teachings that he was describing cigar smoking, if you will.
That's why, yeah, exactly, man. That's why
mindfulness, being in the moment, there. Right?
I also had my pipe on me there too, because I had been living in Rome next to, I had become very good friends with a very famous pipe maker in Rome called Massimo Musico. And
okay, yeah.
he had given me a beautiful pipe. I still have the pipe. It's one of my favorite pipes. So yeah, I had that, and then my usually I would have some Monte 4s, because at that time they would come in 5-packs. The Monte 4 Patakas, they pretty much sold them, and the Italian government controls all the tobacco distribution, so you used to be able to get them at like these coffee / kind of tobacco shops. So I always had some Monte 4s on me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, that leads us into our last question for the night, and I can't thank you.
That was
didn't expect that answer.
You didn't expect that one, right?
Well, I know you're incredibly well traveled, so I thought I thought the answer would be unique, and I was really excited to ask. That's why I wanted, even though we're kind of formally debuting it here in a couple of weeks, I really just wanted to ask you the question, because I figured you had, in all your travels, you had some, and you didn't disappoint. I thought you would have a cool story, and sure enough, you did. I just wasn't expecting a Buddhist monastery in rural Bordeaux. So that's fantastic. What a wonderful story. But that leads us into our curveball question for the night, and this is how we end each show. It's our sponsored by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter.
Khan.
Since the company's inception, Steve Saka has been knocking them out of the park. 7 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to Steve for that accomplishment. So we were actually talking, funnily enough, this was not planned, because it was brought up. We were talking about manufacturing different cigars for different smokers, and we brought up the upsetters and things like that. But that aside, the question is pointed towards traditional, what we call traditional cigars. So traditional cigars with, which you're obviously foremost known for. But what is the weirdest flavor note that you've ever picked up in tobacco? And this is this is subjective, so it, you know, it's weird to you. Like we hear a lot of the classics. We hear that this tobacco has coffee notes and cream and spice and baking spice and wood and earth, and then, you know, when crazy people like me start reviewing cigars, you get, you know, you get all the weird flavor notes and stuff like that. But for you, what's the weirdest flavor note you've ever picked up on in tobacco that you've smoked?
Weirdest flavor note. It doesn't have to be like good, right?
No, it doesn't. Like I said, subjective, totally open-ended question.
Weirdest flavor note and aroma. It's not good though. You know, almost I want to say like a body odor, musty kind of flavor. I'd rather not talk about the specifics of it.
Sure, no
but,
problem. I'm not asking to name names like who grew the tobacco or anything. We're not here to make enemies.
Just musty is the overly musty, if that makes sense.
Kind of like that
overly musty,
BO, like haven't bathed in months.
Yeah.
Oh God,
not as pleasant.
That's
you know.
Dank.
But you know, everybody, to me, papaya has that kind of BO kind of flavor.
It does.
It smells like BO to me.
It does. Sorry,
papaya lovers.
I like papaya. I don't like the smell. Like you're 100% right.
I'm a huge fan of the papaya, so I would say papaya.
Yeah.
Papaya notes.
So all you growers out there, if you have a wonderful tobacco that you just want to sample out to Nick and you're getting notes of papaya, just leave that one in the cure, you know, in the fermentation room. Just leave it there. Just leave it in the Polone and you know, maybe pass it on to somebody else because Nick's not buying. So.
I think that's what they've done. I think they left it in the Pilones too long.
Oh, funny.
And it got too moist.
Wow. Yeah.
Musty papaya.
Nice. So there's a second part to this question.
Great way to.
No, there's a second part to this question. This one might be so, you know, again, this is kind of familiarity, right? You know, we talk about similar flavor notes, but some things about cigars are also, are usually compared to cigars. So people compare cigars to wine or to coffee or to spirits, and you know, it has those different, there's aroma and there's flavor and there's the way it hits the palate and things like that. What food metaphor would you compare cigars to? And it might be one of the things I already mentioned. Like this one's not trying to get a funky answer out of you. I'm just curious.
So I'm sorry, say this again. What food metaphor?
What food metaphor would you compare cigars to? Like, what do you think? Like, you know, would it or and
if
again,
I'm eating food.
Yeah, like do you compare it to cuisine? Would you compare it to winemaking? I mean, I know you're very worldly and well-traveled, as we talked about earlier.
It's very much like wine. To food comparisons, I mean, if you're talking about a meal, I would say like a like a prime rib or a nice ribeye sometimes, depending on the blends. Mm-hmm. I see personally flavor profiles that have, this is not necessarily food, it's more like coffee, kind of nutty kind of flavor profiles.
Sure.
I think nutty is definitely one that is one for me that comes up. And I tend to lean towards, especially when I'm blending stuff, those types of the cacao kind of, but sometimes cigars to me, they have that nice kind of like meaty, like you're eating a nice filet mignon.
Okay. So when you said nutty, that kind of, like, when I hear the term nutty, like my mind immediately goes to Cameroon tobacco, because Cameroon has this very rich flavor. It's a very nutty. There's like, I always pick up some kind of
I love
nut.
Cameroon.
So it's been quite the craze lately. Have you thought about, or have you dabbled with blending with Cameroon before?
I have used it in the past. Excuse me. and have blended with it, but nothing that's really come to market. But Cameroon was one of my favorites. It was, you know, for a long time, it just was a challenge to get it.
Sure.
You know, the kind of grades that were needed. So I'm not saying now. I mean, it's still one of those more difficult tobaccos to get.
Yeah, right.
Yes, it's difficult. But I started again when I started smoking Cameroon. You know, I was always a big Don Carlos fan. When I first started smoking, I was getting Partagas Naturales, used to have Cameroon, and they were uncellophaned in the box. I mean, it was the Cameroon would have so much tooth on it, and that's what I would always look for, is just all the tooth in that wrapper is just flavor pockets.
The freckles, the tooth.
Yeah, just oily and freckly. So I actually am kind of working on a few things behind the scenes. So you might see something, but not quite sure yet. It's not finalized. So it depends on how far I get with it. But it's definitely one of those leaves I have my eye on.
Well, just the prospect of that, Nick, you got a lot of people excited. I'm telling you, man, it's been all the rage the last few years. And, you know, if you dipped your toe in that water, I know you would have a lot of happy fans for sure. So that's
what should I try that has Cameroon that's out there?
Well, you know, you got the classics, like you mentioned, the Don Carlos for sure. I mean, I always go back to Fuente. They're kind of, it's kind of the standard, right? When it comes to Cameroon. You know, for your flavor profile, if he releases it again, or if you can get a hold of some, I know it was released in limited quantity, but James Brown did one for Blackwork Studio called the Swarm. It was from that. Yeah, it was from that the family. He has the Killer Bee, the Green Hornet.
Yeah.
And then he did the Swarm.
Yeah, I love what those guys are doing.
Yeah, the Swarm was Cameroon wrapped. And from what I know of you, and like some of the blends and some of the tobacco that you kind of gravitate towards, that richness, those deep flavor notes that you find in some of your blends that I know
I'll have to hit James up. I'm overdue for hitting James up down in Nicaragua. I didn't get a chance. I'll be down there in a week or so. So I'll have to hit him up and try to mooch some cigars.
The interesting project was General partnering with Espinosa, the Lazona factory, and they did the War Zone. And that was a Cameroon wrapped cigar. And that was a really good cigar. It totally different from the Swarm. The Swarm has that very Blackwork Studio, deep in flavor, you know, like that, the depth and just robustness, and you know, that I think would speak to your palate more. But I think the War Zone will bring kind of be that in between of that elegant richness of like a Don Carlos and the deepness of the Swarm. I think you might like. So you know, of course, Skip made with Romacraft made the Baca, which made, you know,
Baca.
Yeah, that made my top 10 list this past year. So it's a very good blend too. Skip would be, you know, it would be awful for me not to mention. I'm not sure. I'm 100%. I believe it is genuine African Cameroon, but you'd have to ask him on that. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what he said, if it was or not, because there's a lot of Cameroon seed being used in other places now, kind of like what we were talking about with like broadleaf people trying to you know, do broadleaf stuff, and you know, but
Mr. Jay Davis said the Epic 10. What's up, Jay?
Oh yeah, the Epic 10.
Which one's the Epic 10?
Dean Parsons from Epic Cigars. Yeah, AJ.
Oh, okay.
AJ. Well, you might actually be able to get some of that, because AJ made that cigar for him, his 10th anniversary. Dean's 10th anniversary cigar was a Cameroon cigar. And Jake corrected me here, or brought to my attention. Yeah, Baca was actually Cameroon from Mirafel. So yeah, so it was from, you know, same family that, you know, that Fuentes used for all of their stuff. So there you go. Good stuff.
I have to check this out. I'm going to get my hands on some of those.
Fantastic. Well, Nick, again, thank you
man.
so much for your time. What a wonderful evening
Pleasure.
this has been. What a great conversation again. I thank you so much for all your time. I'm really looking forward to having you back. I'm really looking forward to seeing you at the trade show this year again. It'll be great to see you in
Same
person.
here, man.
Been 2
Looking
years.
forward to it.
So
Yeah, too long.
Too
Too long. It's about time. Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking shop with you, and I definitely hope we can have a cigar sooner than later.
Sounds good to me. So for everyone out there, I really do appreciate your time and hanging out with us late as well. All your likes, shares, comments, and in between. If you stay tuned to our ELOSOFUMAR Facebook page, you'll see our calendar of upcoming guests, including next week. I'm really excited to welcome in a first-time guest to ELOSOFUMARTAKES, Howard Gums of Howard G Cigars. Speaking of Cameroon, he has a cigar called the Magic Stick that has a Cameroon wrapper, also very good.
Nice.
So I've been really enjoying those cigars. So I'm really excited to talk to Howard and what he's doing with his small boutique brand, and some NFL players have been working with him on some cigars too. So it's been some pretty cool venture for him. I'm really excited to sit down and hear his story and share that with my audience. Check us out on YouTube, ELOSOFUMAR. As always, you can hit the subscribe button. Always, if you're checking us out on podcasts later, you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to hit the download, subscribe, and review button. If you already are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit unsubscribe. But don't forget to hit resubscribe, because that helps my numbers so that I can keep getting great guests like my friend Nick here. So for everyone out there, this was our 202nd take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Euless, Texas. I'm Bear Duplessis, your host as always. He's Nick Melillo. And guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.